Okay, let me start by sharing a little bit about Wizly before I hand over to David. So Wizly is a platform that is transforming the way the world solves. What does this mean? We are a curated community space for companies to solve business problems. The three domains we currently are specializing in are go-to-market, marketing, and product management. And we are collaborating with leading global professionals such as David. I'll let him introduce himself after this brief introduction. And we really are trying to simplify access to knowledge, talent, and solutions. The world has changed tremendously. We know one of the hardest things to do these days is hiring and finding the right person for your team, for business growth. And Wizly really enables you to get access to very high caliber people to make a difference to your business for growth, whether it's you want more customers, you want to learn how to go to market, people you would not normally have access to hire full-time. And these are the people who will really help you grow. Next slide, please. Since we've launched, which is very recent, we're very new in the market. Beta launch was officially, I would say, April this year. And we've helped over 1,700 individuals and businesses. We have solopreneurs, startups, we have growth companies, and we work with a lot of ecosystem partners such as Shalab's Tech, E27, Tech in Asia, and collaborate. We do one-on-one engagements and we create insights. One of the leading ways to access, the easiest ways, I would say, to access expert advice on Wizly is through our Q&A feature. You put it in, it's free, and one of the experts will answer, and you are guaranteed an answer within 24 to 48 hours. And that gives you a taste of how quickly and the high quality of expertise that's on the platform. We are currently truly a global community platform with professionals and companies from over 16 countries. We have a program called Build with Wizly that is especially for companies to cherry pick, and we can tailor make a program for you that will really have a deliverable at an affordable price with the best implementable plan and framework strategy for your company. So that we'll put it at the end, the QR code for Build with Wizly as well. Everyone who signs up will get a cheat sheet as well as a very discounted consultation session with David. Trust me, it's for grabs because he is going to change his prices on Wizly in the next couple of weeks. So I urge you all to seek his advice. Now I shall hand over to David to introduce himself and carry on with the workshop.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the session. It's really good to have you here. Something that we really care about nowadays is retention, because it's kind of silly to be dialing up our acquisition if we haven't solved our retention. And product-led growth is really something quite complicated that really requires a company to be firing on all cylinders, even though it's sort of like promise of the Holy Grail. But I'm just going to start off by introducing myself. I work with the C-suite to design what's next. I work in growth and product strategy. As part of my experience, I've done monetization and fundraising, not so much of pricing, but monetization design. I bring a very quantified customer lens for value proposition design and go-to-market strategy, which includes a lot of experimentation, includes a lot of testing, and the jobs to be done lens. And then I've done really ground-up startup work and top quartile strategy for top quartile MNCs. So a bit of brand strategy in the beginning before companies doing acquisition. Then I was GM a couple of times. I've done some entrepreneurship. I grew a small company 450%. That was my first exit. And ever since, I've really gone into corporate venture building, deep technology commercialization since about 2014. I've been a chief growth officer at a public listed company. I've been a management consultant at a big four. I've consulted to different McKinsey, Bain, BCG type consultancies. And I currently do quite a lot of venture building consulting. I've also built a multi-sided marketplace. So there's a list of some of the clients, partners I've worked with, employees I've worked for. And let's talk about growth as a system, right? So this is a bit of preamble, right? So if you think about growth as a system comprehensively, right, what led to initial retention and success in the marketplace? This is a really beautiful piece of design, but it was something that was really based on a technology advantage. So Braun and Dieter Rams built this portable radio in 1958. It's quite iconic. It's very emotional in design. It's quite pretty even today, and it's intuitive to use, very important. But it was so iconic and so intuitive to use that Apple and Jobs actually cloned the layout 50 years later to build the first iPod. That's how iconic it is. And that's a indication of the kind of retention and stickiness that you want for your products. And just bear in mind that in 1958, the competition for that Braun radio was this B3X85 tube radio. Look at the size of it. Forget that this one looks a little bit too vintage, but look, it's plugged in. The other one was battery operated and portable. This one is very intimidating to use. We move on to look at other elements of product strategy. Another piece of iconic design that's intuitive. It also had a technology edge because the Eames family were the first to figure out how to form wood like this and provide the disruptive product that this is of designer furniture at a mass affordable price. And it's actually still available. So think about that when you think about retention and how sticky your product is. Again, in 1956, let's look at the competition. This is a beautiful chair. Don't get me wrong, it suits some people, but this is no longer an iconic design. It is no longer available. It is just not as sticky, and it didn't scale. This type of design didn't scale the way the disruptive Eames product did. Let's look at growth as a system in terms of the business model. Another way to create that stickiness and scale was through better discovery, increasing speed to value, and creating for the first time an ecosystem edge in the music industry. This compilation series had 110 volumes. That's stickiness, that's scale. Most went multi-platinum. Some of them went 7x multi-platinum. That's quite significant because they had the ecosystem edge of combining the entire playlists of Virgin Records and EMI Records. And they launched in 83 and they went on for decades, right? In terms of solving this problem of listening to music I like, what did they do? What did other players do, right? So radio, if you look at all the outcomes that a person wants to achieve, just listen to music I like. They could listen to the radio in the old days, and it was great for music discovery, right? Finding music I want to listen to. But radio failed at storing music. So records came in and disrupted the industry. These are the vinyl records. They enhanced availability because now you could listen to the song that you liked whenever you liked, as long as you were at home, as long as you had bought the vinyl. But then listening on the go became the disruptive element that cassette tapes brought. And they brought personalization because you could record your own playlists. You could better listen to music that you liked. When CDs came along, they enhanced the experience. They were quite high tech. It was digital music. The sound quality was significantly enhanced, but they didn't add any outcomes. So they still stored music and they still allowed you to listen on the go. MP3s came and enhanced sequencing. They allowed you to make playlists on the go. They allowed you to further fine tune your ability to listen to music you like. You could easily skip songs. You could easily build better playlists. But in that technology, going to digital created huge dependencies on behalf of the user. So users had to figure out how to store music. They had to buy hard disks. They had to figure out where to buy MP3s. And it was quite a difficult technology to monetize. And if you think about it, why did Apple give the world a free U2 album on the iPhone? Every iPhone comes with the same U2 album, and that's a lot of licensing costs. But that's because when the iPhone came out, Steve Jobs also wanted it to be the best iPod that they had ever built, not just an iPhone. They wanted people to be able to listen to music on it. And if you did not have music on the phone, if you did not know where to buy MP3s, that entire value would be lost. And they wanted to own that iPod market, even though they were phasing out iPods and they wanted the iPhone to take on that role in their company. So they had to stomach the cost of bringing this music onto the iPhone at source. So there was no friction to you enjoying the potential of this new disruptive product. But then what came along? Look at streaming services like Spotify. We understand them well, right? They do content personalization. They even help you choose the music you want to listen for you. They enhance discovery significantly. You can really, it learns your taste with machine learning, but that's nice. Don't get me wrong, those features are great. But what they really did was game changing in helping you find music. So they solved an entirely new outcome, an entirely new pain in your job to getting, on the way to getting the music I like job done. They helped you buy music. So you could either listen freemium or you could actually buy it and have it available, right? You can actually pay for premium. And then they also allowed you to share music, which is a huge element in validating the songs you like. It's also great and viral for the business. And that is why, because they solved different parts and they cannibalized all the revenue from record stores and hard disks and, all the setup phases that you needed to actually get to music, that they actually captured this market share. And this is the increase of their, if you know the phrases TAM, SAM, SOM, right? This increased their specifically obtainable market. And this is how they increased their potential of their business. And, at their high, they're at $64 billion. I just checked today, they're at $16 billion and they haven't made any revenue, but they have achieved 480 million users, and more than half of those are paid users. They're still trying to get to profitability this year, but this is about really being disruptive and capturing market share. Okay, this is also an understanding, all these purple chevrons at the top, this is about making sure that if you want to achieve retention and you want to achieve stickiness and scale, and you want to be product-led, you're really going to have to understand all the outcomes that your users need. If you look at the landing page of Spotify as the same example, right? They not only provided all the outcomes on one platform, which is very disruptive, but they also provide an incredibly rapid time to value experience. Before you log in, before you sign up, you can see all the music that's available. And with a simple login, you can start listening to music for free, even if it's ad supported. That's incredible time to value. So what are we building up to? What we're trying to say is that strong customer experience is the culmination of maximizing relevance to the user, design, understanding their needs and their unmet needs, and value exchange, right? Creating a business that can be monetized and users stick around because they're getting value too. And that's the value exchange. And that's where the stickiness and scale come from. And, in terms of boards, in terms of funders and investors, launch faster, please guarantee your growing revenue. A lot of people believe that marketing can be a major growth driver, but almost a quarter feel that marketing isn't delivering. But that's because growth is a system. And that's brought us to the rise of product-led growth, where the business uses its digital product as the main way to acquire, activate, and retain customers. So this a great bunch of guys, Wes and Ramli, they're really pushing the understanding and the awareness of product-led growth. But what's really important here is that in the journey, in the customer experience, in the job to be done journey as well, you make sure to bring that. If you are product-led and you want to be competitive, you get customers through the 3 moments of value. Okay, and these 3 moments of value are really key. The first is the moment of value perception, whether it's your landing page, whether it's your banner, whether it is the tagline of your company or the description or the benefits on the cover of some kind of packaging. You have to get them to the moment of value perception. If you are targeting or you're describing a need that is not unmet, or it's not very important, or it's not very tangible, you fail this moment. If you do that moment right, you get them to the moment of value experience, because they pick up the product, they take it on, and then they start to use the product, right? They register, they sign up, they start to experience value. And this is a critical moment, because if they don't get the value they expected, or the depth of the value is not what they expected, they churn, they leave, and they find an alternative, or they go back to what they were using before, which is very, very common. I think it's 80% of apps don't even get used a second time. And if you solve the moment of value experience sufficiently, you get them to the moment of value adoption. This is, that moment of value adopted is really retention. Okay. And if you think of these 3 moments, it's not about hitting all 3 moments. It's about getting them through these 3 moments rapidly, because then the flywheel continues. And if they really are retained, you get to show them other features. You get to show them deeper product market fit. You get to show them adjacent product market fit. You get word of mouth. You get continued growth, and you don't have the leaky bucket that is poor retention. And now you continue this, right, into the growth flywheel. So that's the customer experience journey in the 3 moments. But you look at the growth from a business impact lens, you need to maximize value exchange. And that is the mirror, right? So acquisition, we understand this well. A lot of people think that marketing is entirely about this, but in product-led growth, we have to go much deeper than just marketing as an acquisition force. We have to get into engagement and retention, and the really impressive product-led companies now use marketing to add engagement, to add retention, to add experience. And monetization, of course, completes the flywheel, and increased monetization allows you to improve acquisition because, again, you don't have a leaky bucket, but again, you get referral, and again, you get the opportunity to cross-sell or continue selling, right? Renewing that subscription or getting them to buy again and again and again. So let's take this as a case, right? So this is a lot of theory almost, right? But if you look at, a thought experiment, right? I'm going to travel tomorrow. I'm an OCBC customer, and I type best travel credit card Singapore because I want to have a card that either gives me more miles or points or gives me like 0 Forex costs when I'm traveling tomorrow. And if I type best travel credit card Singapore, my bank doesn't come up, right? My bank isn't there. Never mind, right? Do I have value perception here? No, it's a bit low, but I'm a low customer. So what I'll do is that I'll go directly to OCBC, or I'll type OCBC travel credit card, and I will get to this landing page. Now they've revised it since then, but if you come to this point and you're now experts, you understand the 3 moments, right? The moment of value perception, the moment of value experience, and the moment of value adopted. How quickly is this landing page getting me to get a credit card, have it in time for my travel tomorrow, right? Are these benefits exactly what I need to see? And if I click on login, well, good luck. I won't get to this credit card application form. Even though I'm already an existing customer, will they know I'm already an existing customer? I think that's where apply and retrieve details comes in. But will they enable the backend features of this credit card if I'm already pre-approved because they already have done KYC on me as an existing customer? Can they activate all these benefits on my existing credit card and then, take their time to send me the new credit card? Well, that's a huge challenge, but that is the world that we're living in product-led growth. That is the level of having to get people to the moment of value experience, and that's a gap that many companies have a challenge in getting customers to the moment of value experience. But if you look at Revolut, right, once you've gone through their landing page, they'll send you a message with a link to download the app if you put in your phone number. And then within minutes, they've figured out all the digital KYC, take a photo, connect your credit card, connect your national ID. And even before the card gets to your home, which they'll post it to you, and surprisingly quickly, you can already put the card on your app and you can tap to pay anywhere in the world. And this is fantastic. Speed and time to value in terms of adoption. Imagine how that affects your monetization, not just your moment of value adopted, because now it's on the front screen of my phone. I'm experiencing value, I'm adopting value, and then there's potential for monetization because I can use it for transactions immediately. I'm very impressed with the company. And then you apply this to your own customer acquisition journeys, have a look at the things that pop up in SEO. It's, there are number 1 banks in the world where instead of the moment of value perceived, I'm seeing things like card replacement costs or cash advance fees or overdue or penalty or late payment fees, right? So I'm not like talking smack here. I'm just saying that these are opportunities for improvement. Okay, so now let's get to the meat of today, which is getting to retention and a bit of a playbook, right? So what are the 3 frictions or the gaps that we have to overcome. The first is the strategy gap. This is when strategy isn't complete enough for leading in product-led growth. Then there's the execution gap. That's when the execution cannot possibly succeed. And then there's the growth strategy gap. And that's when teams don't have clear next steps for action. And if you are part of a team, you can imagine how happy you'd be to have clear next steps for action. Okay, so let's go into the first, when strategy isn't complete. What does it feel like we're talking about? We're talking about growth is a system. Product-led growth requires the entire system to be working and everything counts. And that is complete strategy for product-led growth. So you've got to have the data to inform priorities. You've got to have full funnel marketing to not only acquire, but also to increase the amount of customer value that is experienced. You have to understand the customer experience. You have to understand the UX, you have to understand the unmet needs and how you relate to the competition, and then you have to be able to build it, right? So let's bring it all together. Companies have mission and vision and values, right? In the vision, that's something that you achieve every 3 years, but at the mission level, it's something that you will have that is timeless. So it's really your core mission forever and ever, amen. Okay, and then your vision is something you achieve every 3 years. DBS went from, wanting to be making banking joyful to making banking invisible. They achieved their vision. They've gone through 4 visions and they've achieved a vision every 3 years and set a more ambitious vision. Okay, but this has to be customer centric. And if your vision is not in customer benefits, if it's not described as customer benefits, it's not a good enough vision. Okay, and then there's the company strategy. And a lot of people think, oh, I've set my company strategy. Our strategy is to grow 15% year on year, and next year, add X number of customers. That's not strategy. That is not a description for how you plan to win. Your strategy must be how you plan to win. And of course, it must be related to the current vision. And these are dependencies. If you don't have the right vision, you can't have the right vision. If you don't have the completed vision, you can't have a completely developed company strategy. These are your company's objectives, and everybody in the company must be able to understand the company objectives because they make thousands of decisions every day. And if you don't guide them in how to make those decisions according to your company strategy, then it's going to be very, very complicated. We call it team misalignment. And only once you've fully developed your company strategy, you then have the product marketing and sales strategy. And surprisingly, this is an execution plan that is often missing. A lot of people, a lot of companies go straight to the product roadmap, the marketing go-to-market, the sales, playbook, right? But until the strategy level has been done, these teams start to plan their own company strategy because they do not know how to make trade-offs between all the options available to them. And only then do we decide what is our North Star, our goals, and our metrics. We move on very quickly to precision positioning. And when we talk about positioning, detailed positioning should be developed at the C-suite level, at the vision, at the company strategy level, because if it's not, then some outsourced performance marketing agency will actually be deciding your positioning for you when they do your acquisition. And this is not uncommon at all, right? So it can be very schizophrenic in the market. And does your marketing really achieve your company strategy? And that's what happens when they try to improve conversion and they move away from your true strategy or your true product offering, and you get a lot of churn. And either sales complains that the leads are not what they should be, and marketing feels that they've achieved their targets, but then nobody's happy with each other. We move on to focusing on growth and thinking about how focused on growth your company actually is, because in product-led growth, you have to put retention and monetization and product and acquisition at the forefront. And some companies go as far as saying that the CMO and the CFO have to contribute to this level of strategy, even though it's product marketing and sales. The CFO even has to be involved because you have to figure out the cost of service for every segment. You have to figure out the cost of acquisition for every segment, and then you can prioritize your growth based on either net profitability or ease of acquisition or some other goal, but it has to be aligned to your company strategy and not decided at the marketing team level. It has to be decided at the strategy level, and that strategy has to directly achieve the trade-offs in your company strategy. And if you really want to focus on growth, then you think back to the birth of growth teams at Google and Facebook and Uber way back in the day. They literally set up purpose-led growth teams that only cared about revenue incrementality. If it didn't move revenue, they didn't work on it, and they prioritized by size of revenue impact. And they were completely ring-fenced, and that's what a company needs to be today. To be product-led, you have to have a team that is absolutely laser-focused on driving revenue impact, whether that is at acquisition or engagement or monetization itself, and understanding all the gaps, getting you through that flywheel as quickly as possible. And mature companies should have growth and retention and monetization built in at the organization level. And if they don't, then you can have a growth team to be set up as a reliable enabler for the rest of the company, people who understand these motions and these mechanisms and provide the engineering capability and the UX and the data and the prioritization capability. So we move on to gap number 2, when execution cannot succeed. So we come back to the stack here and we look at the product and the marketing and the sales strategy, right? And we've already mentioned that this is an execution that is often missing. If this strategy is missing, it creates something called emergent strategy. An emergent strategy is when there is team misalignment because the teams don't have enough clarity on the company strategy. And if they don't have enough clarity on the company strategy, they make their own plans that seem logical to them, but it's impossible for them all to be perfectly aligned unless there is a single source of alignment, which is a company strategy. But it is far more common than not for teams to be misaligned for, let's say, product teams that have a 72 hackathon to launch a new killer feature, only for marketing to say that they can't fit it onto the marketing roadmap for another 2 months or until the next quarter because, you know, budgets have already been allocated or something else, right? So that means that the company strategy and the product and marketing sales strategy are not aligned, and people are creating their own independent roadmaps, and you can't win that way, right? It's just quite simple, right? So we have to avoid emergent strategy that happens when people do execution to their own incentives and agendas and constraints. We have to get deliberate strategy back on the cards. Even worse, if there is emergent strategy from, you know, uncoordinated execution at the team level, there will be confusion at the leadership level because there are unexpected outcomes. We're not achieving the targets we wanted. These are unexpected, and we don't know if our strategy was to blame or execution was to blame. And if you don't have that clarity, how do you fix the problem and get closer to product market fit? If product and marketing strategy are deliberate and they're not reactive, then you can make this kind of reliable progress, right, towards product market fit. That's the kind of level of strategy that we need. You need to have enough clarity on next steps to be able to move on to optimize. And you won't always have the right answer because sometimes you have an unexpected result. But if it's an unexpected result, but you have real-time data and you are testing hypotheses sequentially and you're not testing 4 or 5 variables at a time, you will have clarity on next steps. And you will know the difference between when execution is a variable and you know what to test next instead of being unclear what to test next. Or you'll know if strategy was the variable, and then you won't know whether it's a variable you need to tweak or the complete strategy that you need to tweak. You need to be able to get clarity on next steps and move on to optimize. So now we come to the bottom of the stack, right? At the offering delivery in this execution gap. So this is when we're quite familiar with this. In lean methodology, we talk about building an MVP as quickly as you can and launching it to the market so that we can get customer response, right? No plan survives first contact with the customer. That's a very true phrase. The challenge with an MVP is that it tests many variables at once, and we'll talk about all the variables in positioning in a later chapter. But imagine testing 6 different things at once and then trying to figure out whether it's strategy that's wrong or positioning that's wrong or which element of positioning that's wrong. That's why we need the right strategy based on the right company strategy to be able to make reliable progress towards product market fit and retention. And these first 4 levels are dependencies for aligned and empowered teams. So what are the levels of depth that we need for this all to be not a pipe dream, right? So level 1, right? Product market fit or business model. This is the business model canvas, essentially, right? What is desirable? What is feasible? And what is viable, which in other words is profitable, right? We need to be at the center of these 3 circles, right? Then we are able to de-risk any kind of growth, but in particular product-led growth, where there's so much of engineering inside this, right? There's product debt and timelines to turn features off and turn features on. But at level 2, right? We have to figure out true depth in product market fit, right? And a great definition was Mark Andreessen's, right? Where he said, being in a good market with a product that can truly satisfy that market, right? But we need to break this down because there's a lot in here actually, right? The good market refers to, is the market big enough? Is there enough revenue potential in this segment? Because a lot of good ideas do not make money. And then you have to look at the phrase, can satisfy that market, right? Is there an identifiable unmet need? Because 90% of startups fail. And in the top 10 reasons, 3 of the reasons that these top tier startups fail are due to a lack of product market fit. So it's not that easy to identify an unmet need. A lot of companies struggle with understanding all the needs, let alone the top most painful and important unmet needs. Life is hard. And then being in that market means developing access to that target customer segment. So there's a lot of cost of acquisition, there's inflation in marketing costs, there's a lot of importance now on organic growth and viral growth that's independent of paid acquisition. But developing access to that target customer is challenging. Understanding the customer well enough to know whether you should be targeting them on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, because they're entirely different costs and entirely different ROIs, and it depends on the ROI of your product. And then, is there a predictable enough buying or usage behavior in this segment so that you have some kind of sustainable business, or you become the wrong product for the wrong era and you become a sad story like, Sony from market dominance, or the creative being dominant and being disrupted and displaced over and over again in history. So we have to get to the unmet needs and the job to be done of the customer, right? So David Ogilvy phrased this, it's quite a fun phrase. It's hard to action on, but it is a problem. Customers don't say how they feel. They don't say what they think, and they don't do what they say. And this is why we have to balance quantitative and qualitative research for that insight to understand unmet needs. And there are better ways than using just interviews and surveys. You have to use customer observation, not just customer response, to get a balanced understanding of unmet needs. So when we go to level 3, right, getting to product market fit and retention requires understanding the landscape as well as the user's depth of need for your product market fit hypothesis. So until you've proven product market fit, it's a hypothesis no matter how much time you spend planning it. But this is systems thinking, and it's quite complicated. So again, it's another overlap of all the Venns, right? So the core user, what are his desires? What are his desired outcomes? And you saw on Spotify, there's a whole range of phases to get a job done. So do you understand all their outcomes that they want, all their pains? Do you understand the value propositions of your alternatives, right? Value proposition means, the benefits. What are the benefits your alternatives bring? And I intentionally don't say competitors here. I say alternatives because Excel is an alternative to many SaaS tools, right? It's an alternative, but it's not a competitor. But alternatives are very, very important. And then you have to understand your value proposition. A lot of people can't actually articulate their benefit, and they go to market with features, right? It's like begging somebody, when you're selling makeup or moisturizer, begging them to rub salicylic acid and vitamin E on their face, right? I'm not describing benefits, I'm describing the features of the cream. But if I tell them this will remove your pimple and remove your wrinkle, and it will remove that pimple by 6 p.m. in time for your date tonight, and There's one version that makes you more tanned, and there's one version that makes, lightens your skin, right? Then I'm really describing benefits. I'm really contextualizing for core user desires. And then I really have a chance at succeeding in the market and capturing market share. So if there's no overlap with your value proposition and your core users' desires, those are points of irrelevance, right? There's no point going to market with these, just abandon the idea. If your value proposition overlaps with your competitors, there's no differentiation. These are your points of parity, but at least, right? These are minimum market requirements. At least these are what your users want, and they are important to understand, and they are important to provide. Unless you're a very specialist tool, but then doesn't fit this diagram. But if you are the one providing those benefits to your users and your competitors can't, then these are your points of difference. And sometimes if you want to compete successfully, you need both points of parity and points of difference. And wherever you overlap, you need to be cheaper, better, and faster, right? And you have to be perceptibly cheaper, better, and faster. So not just remove my pimple, but remove my pimple by 6 p.m. tonight. That would be very compelling. And then you would have a chance of capturing market share. But then at level 3, we go to company strategy. And again, how do we win? And this is iterative, but you need a well-developed strategy to make reliable progress. Otherwise, your teams can't start and you build the wrong MVP and you struggle to capture the first 10,000 users and you have very high churn, right? So remember the points of parity, points of difference, and the points of relevance, right? The core tenets of company strategy are relevance, differentiation. So relevance is to the user, differentiation is versus your competitors. And then do you have a sustainable competitive advantage or is it a transient competitive advantage, right? Because I remember when NVIDIA had the competitive advantage and now there's an Apple M series, M1 and M2 chip and has completely blown, the old processors, the previously dominant processors out of the water, and the computers are less noisy and they have longer battery life and they produce less heat and they're at a price that anyone can afford. Well, most people can afford. And that is sustainable competitive advantage, right? And how do you decide how to build that competitive advantage? Then you go to level 4, you keep going and going and going. You have to do it quickly, right? So this is the level of resolution that your positioning hypothesis should be developed to and then tested systematically, right? And on one side of this continuum, you've got corporate strategy and top down. This is the leadership level. This is the first 3 or 4 levels of the stack that we went through. And then you've got your execution level and that bottom up level, right? So that's who contributes to that. And this is a whole, session by itself, but essentially you have to figure out who you're targeting, what is the job to be done, what are your competitive alternatives, what is your value proposition, what are the benefits that you bring, what are the users' desired outcomes along their journey. And this is a bit of customer experience, and this is a bit of time, and this is a bit of what are the alternatives, but it's a very important step to go through. And we have very detailed exercises to actually get this done. And this is a huge source of competitive advantage if you do this kind of exercise. And then you can get to defining what is the problem you're trying to solve. And in your elevator pitch, this is the first sentence you lead with. And that's how much work needs to be done before you can actually even define the problem you're trying to solve, right? Because if you produce virtual credit cards, are you producing virtual credit cards for small company CFOs to improve their understanding of billing and costs and recording and compiling end of month statements? Or are you a virtual credit card that allows a husband and a wife to, for the first time, virtualize having their first shared bank account so they can make shared family expenditure together for the first time, and solve a major challenge to that, right? So what is the problem you're trying to solve? It's still a virtual credit card, but what is the problem you're trying to solve? It's different. And that is the level of understanding that you have to have. And then you move on to what are their greatest unmet needs, because now you understand all their needs and you focus only on the unmet needs. Then you will understand your differentiation and unique attributes because you have to understand your competitive alternatives. And then you map your features to solve this. And those are your North Star. And then you study the metrics to make sure that those features are being used with a high level of satisfaction and a high level of retention, and that you're not acquiring and then churning. It's a lot of work there. So then we move on to the growth strategy gap, right? If the teams don't have clear next steps, what do? We have to understand, right? Sorry for that broken thing, but the teams have to be directed by leading indicators that matter. You need a CFO perspective and then focus. Because if you don't focus on understanding your segment and the job to be done, you can't produce the right customer experience that's dominant. You can't produce shareholder value and you can't produce profitability, right? So divide it into growth or productivity, some kind of margins and profitability, right? Marketing contributes to all of these, but growth teams contribute to all of this, and product-led companies have to understand all of this and build it into their DNA. Within growth, you can expand market share, you can expand markets, or you can penetrate more deeply, right? So one is taking share from competitors, one is converting non-users or adjacent users, moving on from your core users, or increasing usage from the same users, or selling them different things, or entering new segments, which are entirely new users. But in terms of productivity, improving your margins, can you use product-led growth to lower, to cut your costs? Can you use it to reduce lower profit activities, right? So Uber stopped buying, was not a company about investing in asset heavy. They became an asset light company. So they did not have lower profit activities. They had it removed from their business model. Do you use all these efforts to be able to raise prices because you have better experience, because you have better understanding of the customer, because you're doing their needs better, because you're solving more pains on one platform better? And can you reduce fixed costs with product-led growth? And why is this so complicated? And why do you need to focus? And why is testing early so important? A lot of people talk about product market fit, right? So the market is the segment that's part of product market fit. And the value proposition is the product, right? Because the product creates the benefits. So this is what we traditionally call product market fit, but it's only one fit out of the 4 fits. And if you understand the business model canvas, which I'll bring up in a while, this is the whole right side of the business model canvas. But you need another level of fit, which is the revenue fit, right? So can you make money? Can you be profitable? With 488 million users and I think 188 million paid users, Spotify is still not able to achieve profitability, and maybe they'll achieve profitability this year, right? So this, you can't take any of these fits for granted. But this is called segment revenue fit. Can you monetize them in the right way? How are you better? What is your average, what is your revenue per user, per product? Do you have a detailed understanding of your revenue model as well? And that's one type of fit. And then the next fit is on the channel. Do you have revenue channel fit? Because channels have different costs to acquire. Some of them have different cost of service as well, because you need different teams to spin up different channels. You need to understand the difference between brand marketing channels, product marketing channels, lead generation channels. And you have to understand the friction to acquisition and understand whether these users are actually on that channel, because you've got to have an ROI per acquisition. You've got to have a CAC LTV ratio. You've got to have a payback ratio. And you need to have this revenue channel fit, because sometimes you just can't sell that kind of product on that channel, right? So you can't sell complex financial products on Instagram, perhaps. So you can't sell, very simple content creation tools on LinkedIn to bankers or technologists, perhaps, right? It all depends. And the last fit is value proposition channel fit. So really, how are you communicating on that channel and acquiring? And this is all very complicated, because as soon as you change any one of these inputs, all the rest change as well. And you need to nail all 4 fits. And that's why moving from MVP to product market fit to business model fit is so challenging. And if you want to be a $100 million company, you've got to solve all these 4 fits. And it's a dynamic moving set of fits. Excuse me. So wrapping up very soon, because different user groups deliver different kinds of revenue per user, and different kinds of profits, and different kinds of lifetime values, and different levels of retention, especially at launch of a new product or a new feature or a new revenue generating feature, you can only target hypothesized core users. And that's because, especially when you're launching it before there's a product market fit, you have to design your core features to create a specific value for a specific user. If you acquire an adjacent user, so it's kind of like the wrong user, but he's not that far wrong, you'll get some value, but it's not for who it was designed. And you can't design for everybody. And if you think you can, then that's a very high risk belief. So you have to really design for specific product market fit. And then there are non-adjacent users, and these will not be your users, and they're low value, they're low value to you, and they will experience low value from your core features. So you have to understand that. And that's why you have to focus, because if you try to acquire non-core users, you have a challenge. And a lot of pivots actually happen when we find that we have better retention and traction and monetization from adjacent users, and that our core users were not really the best fit users for our product. And then we move on to focusing on adjacent users. And that's actually a bit of a pivot. At least it's not a reset, but it's a pivot. So the next steps for making this actionable, right? So you need North Star metrics to enable the trade-offs to improve mid to long-term value for clear next steps. So at the ground level, the teams need to understand what are leading and predictive indicators and metrics. What are lagging and historical metrics? So in the stack, the company strategy is a leading and predictive one, but the product and offering strategy is a little bit lagging, because that creates mid to long-term business results. And you have to make sure that your business results are aligned to customer value, because now we're customer-centric. Now we understand the 3 moments, and we understand that engagement and retention are important before we can achieve monetization. But we can't study and predict mid to long-term results. So we need something more leading and more predictive. And these have to be the North Star metrics built up from leading indicators. And we have to understand what those are. And until we do, we cannot have alignment between marketing and sales and marketing and product management and go-to-market strategy. It's simply not possible, because the teams will be working to different roadmaps and they will not be aligned. And that is the value of having North Star metrics and leading indicators. So the teams at the ground level need this for alignment. Otherwise, they will be making decisions that do not ladder up to achieving company strategy. As a rule of thumb, what is a vanity metric and what is a leading indicator? If it is a lagging indicator, right, like revenue, your revenue this quarter might be from products you launched 2 years ago and it took people time to monetize. If it's lagging or it doesn't clearly contribute to incremental revenue, attribution is hard, but at least incremental revenue, then it could be a vanity metric rather than a leading indicator, and you don't focus on it. Okay, so that's just a rule of thumb. Now, when we bring it to execution, go-to-market has to understand all the components of strategy, and that's the nature of product-led growth, where the product is part of the go-to-market, essentially, right? So we have to bring it to life with full funnel marketing and map it to the customer journey. So we've got the pirate metrics, right? The 3 A's: awareness, right? Acquisition, activating them, creating them, as an account, revenue, referral, and retention. And these 3 R's can happen in any order, and it depends on your product and your journey and the customer. These 3 R's can happen in any order, but you have to map this to your business model. So this is not just a marketing concept. This is how go-to-market and business design come together, right? Because you have to understand acquisition, right, at the top of the funnel, engagement and retention somewhere in the middle of the funnel, and you can see that in between activation and revenue, there's this complex thing of engagement and retention, and then monetization, with referral and retention contributing to acquisition again at the bottom of the funnel. So it goes around and around and around like this flywheel. And we have to design that intentionally. And we have to connect all teams to the customer journey, because in product-led growth, every team has an impact on the experience and the moment of value experience and the moment of value adopted. Every team has to contribute to that. Otherwise, you can't prioritize the teams and their roadmaps, we call it time and resources, to the greatest business impact, right? So we have to connect it and understand, are we solving churn in between awareness and acquisition? Are we solving churn in between acquisition and activation? Are we solving churn in between activation and revenue, right? These are mapped to those 3 moments. And these 3 moments can actually happen in between each gap. And we understand that they have a problem of perception of value, that they have a problem of experiencing value, were they unable to adopt value because they were unhappy with the value experience, all the way down the funnel. So we have to identify which moment gap led to the undesired result. And we have to think across the whole funnel as well as in between each step of the funnel. And we have to move away from marketing being about excellence in acquisition or value perception only. And we have to move towards marketing contributing to the value experienced. And this is a lot of what growth teams do. They have marketers and data and UX and product together to make that value experience. But if you look at really good just marketing, right, this is a very cool use of personalization and targeting or whatever, right? So, you know, a very clever little ad with name personalization. But that's just traditional marketing, right? It's not good enough in product-led growth. You can be more ambitious. You can deepen the value perceived with the right message at the right time, a different level of personalization, but this time inside the journey, where this email is being received when somebody has started their sign-up process, right? 5 minutes ago. And so they are in the acquisition, they've been acquired, right? But they're not successfully activating, but they're, you know, setting up a project management tool like Monday.com is quite complicated. So you need to remove the frictions, you need to add reminders, you need to add urgency with the trial and so on and so forth. And, you know, product and marketing working hard to make activation turn into retention and engagement before it can get to revenue, right? From the second moment of value experienced all the way to moment of value adopted. And then can you be even more ambitious? Can you contribute to value experience, not just value perceived, right? So when you get a new iPhone, they will send you a welcome email, not to welcome you, right? Not to be friendly, right? But to actually describe the features of your new phone, because there's so many new features all the time, and getting more experienced value requires you knowing that those features exist. So they actually go through tremendous lengths. And by the way, if you can see the difference between the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 13, right, where, you know, I did not have a new phone in between that, they knew that I didn't. So they didn't send me welcome to your new iPhone emails. They sent me personalized emails with the right kind of content to get me to moment of value perceived, to try and get me to migrate from a 10 to an 11 to a 12. That is the level of personalization and complexity that if you really want to compete, this is what you have to do. And this is what it looks like inside those emails, right? So they're helping you perceive their emails, right? Explore tools you love using every day. They have to keep you experiencing value. They have to make sure that you maximize the value experience so that you retain, right? So that you refer, so that you create positive word of mouth, and so that you buy the iPhone 14. Okay, so they go into a high level, right? So they outside of the product, these are external triggers. So if you think of the Nir Eyal hooked model, these are external triggers, and these prompts and these nudges and this kind of awareness and discovery creates a lot of value. So marketing here is helping not only with perception, marketing is contributing to value experienced. And then they can go into incredible amounts of detail and show them new elements of the product, right? And you analyze the response to this, and you understand in terms of customer support and Genius Spa, and you bring that voice of the customer from all over the company, including sales and customer support, and bring that into your marketing to understand what people don't understand well enough and prioritize that in one email. Or you can be even more ambitious, right? And again, still contributing to value experience. So this is the Ring doorbell. It's a digital doorbell. It has a camera. It's wireless. It's cordless. It has a battery. And instead of just marketing being acquisition, marketing sends this email tied to the product because the product notifies an automation that tells the owner that the battery is low. Right? So that's very helpful. That's great. But then marketing goes an extra step and adds to the experience by tap on the button before for tips on removing the battery and replacing the battery and charging the battery and just solving the problem. So marketing is contributing to value experience, not just an acquisition function. And in product-led, it's not just marketing. I know I gave a lot of marketing examples, but all functions will be involved. Apple has legal and hire purchase and finance to inside those emails. They have hire purchase and trade-ins and a whole bunch of functions to be able to improve either acquisition or engagement or moving from moment of value perceived to moment of value experienced. And in the 9 elements of a complete business model, we won't go through them today. You can see that, when it comes to defining the problem or the solution or figuring out acquisition or figuring out retention or understanding what kind of partnership strategy you have, multiple teams have to be assembled to be able to do this. And if you look at something as complex as retention, you need a growth team, you need a data team, you need a product person, you need a CX person, you need full funnel marketing to solve each one of these problems. So growth really is a system. It's really systematic. It's really a team sport. But on a serious note, when you're driving growth, of course, it's easier said than done. And there is a trade-off between revenue and organizational complexity, because when you're driving growth, you can build more features. And if you push into product debt, then you'll go for product market fit breadth, not depth. So you won't be building a better experience for current users. You're trying to build product market fit for other users. It may lead to low quality work. It may need for increased time to spend refactoring. Your product might become complex for the core users and delay the moment of value experienced for the best fit users. It can impact your product performance and stability. But if you push that debt to the go-to-market, to the marketing, they're doing more effort, they're launching more channels, they're spending more. They need more support for more customers to close more deals, to get them from acquisition to revenue. There are more costs for that marketing. There's more costs for those teams. It can be much less sustainable because we always have a CFO who's looking at return on investment or ROAS or return on ad spend and so on and so forth, right? And it can lead to very near-term lead generation focus instead of a good mix of brand marketing and product marketing and lead generation, because you need brand marketing to over time bring down the cost of lead generation. And so this pendulum swings back and forth, and John Cutler, has really coined a couple of these phrases from Amplitude. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But there are 3 or 4 different ways you can deal with this. So not to be a downer, let's end with the ways you can deal with this. You can absorb this, right? You make the teams work harder, make them work longer hours. You have those 72-hour hackathons. Okay, is that sustainable? I don't think so. You can outsource that, right? You can add teams, you can add agencies, you can add product teams, you can outsource QA, for example. But I put an asterisk with avoid. If you can avoid it with the right amount of focus, you'll have a good balance between product debt and go-to-market debt. And then you'll avoid building the wrong features or acquiring the wrong customers with more focus and more specificity, and have more reliable understanding of what's working, what's not working, so that you can have clarity on next steps. So avoiding is really the ideal outcome here. And I think with that, that's all we have, folks. So I'll open it up. I'm hoping to be able to see any questions that anybody has on anything we discussed today.
You can feel free to put the question into the Q&A box. If you want to speak directly with, I can unmute you as well. So just raise your hand and I will unmute you if you want to have a slightly more interactive style of asking. This is the QR code to what we mentioned earlier, Build with Wizly, which David is very much part of, and he can work with you as well as other GTM experts based on your needs. It's a very collaborative approach where you almost get a team of Wizly professionals, expert professionals to assist you to get your business to the next level. Okay, so I see so far no questions. I mean, it was it was so I learned so much, David. That was so rich, the content, and I love the way you broke it down. The three: strategy gap, execution gap, growth strategy gap, and I'm just summarizing here, as I know I can't do it justice, but relevance to your user. I think one of the things that really that comes out a lot when you're launching a product, getting into a new market, is the hypothesized core user, which you mentioned. And you can't have just one user. There will be nuanced differences. And as a marketer and communication person, I always still try to pick up the biggest pool so the communication is clear. What's your view on that? Is that, could identifying the wrong main user, or making the communication so niche that only that small pool of people get it, lead to a wrong strategy, in fact? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Oh my gosh, I haven't had that in a while. This is the first virtual I've done in a while, actually. I've been doing a lot of in-person lately. So it sounds like in that scenario, the strategy is still fixed and you don't know, you don't go back to challenge the strategy. You're still trying to figure out between several core segments, and you're trying to figure out between several core value propositions, because otherwise you would be more clear on exactly which the segment is. And this is the challenge and the weakness of segmenting by demographics, right? By age and so on and so forth, right? You could have a male or a female, middle-aged or retired, who wants to wear the same Rolex, right? Who cares what my age is, or what my job role is when trying to sell me Monday.com project management, right? You have to be more focused on the job to be done, because jobs to be done are universal. There are outcomes. You describe people by groups of the outcomes that they want. I want more organization in managing multiple teams. I want more organization in managing complex roadmaps. I want more clarity on tasks and what's happening and what's not happening and what's delayed and what's been successfully achieved. And those are outcomes that you market across, right? So yes, I mean, when I say, you target one core user segment, I mean, you target several core user segments, but you understand on a sliding scale of how well your features deliver the outcomes across those segments, and you prioritize accordingly. And you can never really only market to one segment, because still on LinkedIn, I can still only target demographically, right?
Yes.
I can't say, people who are interested in, speeding up the time in their meetings with better project management tools or something like that. It's not quite the thing, right? I can describe it in the marketing copy and intent and base search and
in a way,
intent-based marketing.
You can target according to value system. Actually, the way you have, one of the biggest things is, when you're trying to price, it's like some people in certain markets, forget demographics, it's cultural, there's so many other factors, that they will pay for a certain service and they will pay a certain amount for a certain service. So I think value system segregation is something that is becoming increasingly needed for product market fit and launching.
It's totally true. In fact, among all your features, you are trying to figure out willingness to pay and trying to understand which of your features customers will pay for. And that's a big hurdle to cross when we're doing freemium to paid, migrating user from free to paid. Figuring out what they will actually pay for. I mean, look at Spotify and the challenge of figuring out what users are willing to pay for. Because, is it the biggest selection, right? So if they pay, will they get a bigger selection of music? If they pay, will they get better personalization? Will they get better history? Will they get better sharing? What are they willing to pay for? And how do I separate free from paid features, for example? That's a big question in product-led growth. And you only understand that when you understand all their desired outcomes, all their pains, and you can figure out a way to prioritize their biggest pains that are most important. And that is totally different from segmenting demographically. That is segmenting by need or desired outcome, or in other words, jobs to be done. So that's a really fun and a very detailed, laborious exercise.
Yes. Great. Okay, I have no questions. Anybody? I am going to take, I guess
Well, look, yeah.
your session was super clear then, and super informative. Okay, we have one. Kate J is asking if we are able to rewatch this later. Yes, we will be sending a little cheat sheet and the recording.
Is this available on LinkedIn Live after the session?
Maria, usually it is, right?
Yes, it is available.
Okay. That's amazing. Great, everybody. I think it is quite overwhelming. I mean, I can run this over a period of 6 weeks,
Yes,
for a venture, and it's a process. And we didn't touch on any of the exercises, and we actually didn't touch on all of the things that you need to do in product-led growth. But it is a process. It is iterative, and you can create rapid impact by following avoiding some of these pain points. If nothing else, really describe your value proposition in terms of benefits instead of features, and if you're not, you'll see a difference.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, and wonderful session, informative and power packed. Will take time to unpack. Exactly. I think it was a lot, and just really great. I'm making some class notes right now.
Retention is a complex thing. Yeah.
Yes. So thanks again, David, and really so glad you could do this for us.
Thank you, Gaurav.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Take care. Ciao.